It's Mac and Perry in the place. Da-na-na-na. Mac and Perry.
Go live to create.
Da-na-na-na. Mac and Perry invite you to stay.
Welcome once again to the Windy City's finest On Location with Mac and Perry. I'm Perry, he's Mac, and this is...
I'm Jessica.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us, Jessica.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, and I'm super excited to be in the space here, but we'll get to that in a bit. Right now, I'm super excited to jump into some icebreaker games and just get to know you a bit, help our audience get to know you, and just find some connection points, and maybe we'll learn about those. But because we are on location in Medicine Hat, we have some trivia questions. The stakes have never been lower.
Oh, good.
But our first question for you, multiple choice, is on July 12th, 1886, the all-time recorded high in Medicine Hat was approximately 42 degrees Celsius, 47 degrees Celsius, 37 degrees Celsius, or D, 39 degrees Celsius. It's kind of a guessing game unless you know a lot about temperature.
Are you kidding me? I'm going to guess the all-time recorded high in 1886 was probably 39 degrees.
Ooh, so close. It was A, 42 degrees Celsius.
Rats.
I don't even know how they would have measured that back then, but...
Mercury,
there you go. Awesome. Yes, moving swiftly along to our next question here. The oldest historic building in Medicine Hat is A, the Ewart-Duggan House, the Brown-Durand Residence, the Canadian Pacific Railway Station, or the Cecil Hotel.
I feel like it's the Ewart-Duggan house next to the Esplanade.
It sure is. And apparently that was in 1887. So very close to 1886 when they measured the
That's
hottest
a beautiful
temperature.
building. You should check it out when you have
Absolutely.
time.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you for the recommendation. We've asked a question about it. We should probably check it out. Yeah. Awesome. Great. There we go. We'll move swiftly along to our this or that mini game with our lovely hat here. And so, yeah, this is just this or that, coffee or tea. And then we'll just talk about that briefly for a second and move on. And I will let you do the honors and pick the first one.
Okay, this is a hat for Medicine Hat.
Yes.
Okay. Do I read it?
If you want to, I could also read it.
Dress up or casual?
Ooh, dress up or casual. What would be your preference?
Casual.
Casual? Is there a
Yeah.
reason for that, or just?
Well, because I'm a painter, so I cannot keep things paint-free. So if I dress up, it's a mess.
Yeah.
How about you?
Oh, me? Casual. I would have to say casual. I worked at a men's clothing store with suits and everything, so I did have to dress up every day to go to work, and after a while, it kind of got a bit tedious.
Right.
And yeah, being an artist, I don't know, I just like being able to move and feel free, and yeah, that's my vibe. So.
Right on.
Awesome. I will pick our next one. Donkey or horse? And I can tell you where this question came from if you would like context. So I'll go first. I would say horse, but being in the UK, I don't know why, but I went to a beach one time and we rode donkeys on the beach.
Oh, that's so romantic.
Whereas here it would be horses. Yeah. So that's where the question came from. But what would be your preference?
Probably horses, but I'm maybe not as familiar with donkeys.
Absolutely. That's totally fair.
Yeah.
Nice. We'll move swiftly along. So our next game here is Tumbling Towers. So each block is associated with a question, and I'm just going to get ready. And I will let you do the honors. We cannot pick from the top 3 layers, but anything else underneath you can pick from.
Right now?
Yeah, go for it. We'll see what we get.
1, 2, 3. Okay, I'll do this one.
Oh, nice.
Yoink.
That is number 16. Who is someone who inspires you?
Someone who inspires me is my mom. She passed away a couple of years ago, but my mother, Phyllis Plattner, was an incredible painter and also an art instructor. So I'm sort of following in the family business. And she was just a very, very special, powerful, unique person.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
She always taught me that you don't have to follow the popular way or the mainstream way, and especially as an artist, you should do what's meaningful to you. So whether it's a ticket to success or not, it doesn't matter as long as you're being honest and have integrity with your own work.
Nice. I think it is your turn.
Okay.
To try the next one.
It's either 12 or 21.
Let's see, 21.
Oh yeah, you can tell on this one. 21.
If you could time travel, when would you go?
Oh, wow. If I could time travel, I would be really curious to go back to the Renaissance and meet some of the artists of that time. There's a particular woman artist named Sofonisba Anguissola,
Okie dokie.
who was one of the first women to become really well known as a painter. And we named our daughter after her.
Beautiful.
And I would be very curious to meet her and talk to her and like watch her paint and just see what the whole process was like.
That's beautiful.
Come on, tumbling tower.
Nice. 54. Nice. That is the last one, I believe. What's one act of kindness we should all do more of?
An act of kindness we should all do more of is really listening to each other. Like when we say, "How are you?" we should really give some time and listen to the answer. I think we would have a nicer community if that were the case.
I think that's all the time we have for this segment. So
Okay.
thank you so much for playing these games with me.
I'm so glad I didn't make the tower.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in on YouTube or any other platform that this may be on. And yeah, this has been the Windy City's Finest, On Location with Mac and Perry. I'm Perry, he's Mac, and this is
Jessica.
And we'll be right back.
Welcome to Whitney City's Finest, On Location with Mac and Perry. I'm Mac, he's Perry, and this is...
Jessica.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for chatting with me, Jessica. We learned a little bit about you, kind of some games beforehand, but now we're going to get into your art. We're going to talk about arts.
Right on.
And we'll see how that goes. Yeah, so I think maybe just briefly, you could just tell me who you are as an artist.
So my name's Jessica Plattner. I'm a painter. I studied painting, so I have a BFA, a Bachelor of Fine Art, and an MFA, which is a Master of Fine Art. And my work is mostly figurative, but it has an element of magical realism, which is when something is not quite realistic, but it looks as if it could happen in the real world. It's related but different from surrealism. Magical realism is more related to Latin American writing, which are some of my favorite authors are Latin American magical realists. So I've lived in Mexico over long periods of my life. So that's a big inspiration and influence on my work.
Great, yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, and maybe tell me about, I guess, the last piece you were working on.
Well, so this painting, can you see it?
Yeah, we can see. This is the last one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was the most recent finished. I've been working on it for a long time. I started it about 6 months ago, and then I thought it was finished, and then I changed some things, and then it sat for a couple of months, and then I worked back into it just right before this show. So this is the first time that it's been shown. It's called Compose, and I'm thinking about how we compose ourselves to present ourselves to the public or to the people that we meet, how we compose a composition and artwork, how people say compose yourself, like put yourself together. So it's a self-portrait, and it's from a series of self-portraits that I've been working on for the past few years. What else can I tell you about it?
Yeah, it just gives me a sense of kind of what the art might look like exactly. You mentioned, the magical realism.
Yeah, magical realism.
Yeah, just tell me a little more about that, about why that's important to you.
So there's something about this. There's something about the world that is weirder than the surface of the world. So in magical realism, things happen, like, I don't know if you've read 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And it has all these, it feels like a real situation, but then things start happening. Everybody gets a forgetting illness where they forget the names of things and they start labeling things, but then they forget how to read. And it feels like the things that are not real are sometimes more real than the actual world, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah.
So that's something that I've always been drawn to.
Has that always been a pretty constant thing in your work?
You know, it really has been because of living in Mexico and traveling to Mexico a lot and having that influence of Latin American artists and writers.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you were there when you were quite young too, right?
Yeah,
What first brought you there?
My dad is an anthropologist, and he studied market systems, and his studies were in Latin America. So we lived in Peru, Guatemala, and Mexico, and my mom was a painter. So having those two influences combined to affect my work quite a bit.
Yeah. What sort of themes are you generally exploring?
I'm interested in people and how we see the world. So more than like what the world looks like, I'm interested in what it feels like or what it might mean on a deeper level. So I never have been an artist particularly interested in setting up a still life and getting lost painting it, which is a beautiful practice. There's nothing at all wrong with that, but that's not what I'm drawn to as an artist. I'm more drawn to getting some sort of a feeling or emotion out of painting.
Yeah, I remember in like one of your exhibits, the description, you even talked about how like we move so fast in our day-to-day life, and how painting and these things help you slow down, right? Yeah, can you talk a bit about that? Why that's important?
Yeah, definitely. We're so like more and more attached to our devices, and we get information so fast. We're expected to respond to things really quickly. We get an email on our phone. We have to get back to the person right away. We see images super fast. If you look at even like Instagram and how it's transformed over the past however many years, with short form video, like our attention spans are so short. And with a painting, you have to kind of slow down. Well, you don't have to do anything. But ideally, to really take a painting in takes time. And the painting is always there. It's not going to change. So there's time for you to slow down and stand in front of it and gain more and more visual information as you look at it.
Yeah, and even if I remember correctly, like even some of the techniques you're using with the different layers and styles kind of brings you in and makes you look a bit longer too, right?
I hope so, yeah. I want to fool the eye a little bit so that you have to spend some time saying, wait a minute, what is that? And what's on top and what's underneath? And maybe puzzle some things out while you're looking at a painting.
Yeah, for sure. And another kind of thing I kind of pulled out of some of your work was like, there's a lot of like contradiction and juxtaposition, right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think that's how life is. It's never one way or another way. It's always kind of both ways at the same time. And our world is so polarized right now, more and more. And I think the more that we can accept multiple things being true at the same time, the healthier we'll be as a society. And it might seem lofty to talk about those things as a painter, but I really do think about the importance of holding multiple truths at the same time and leaving some space for contradictory things to happen at the same time. I think that's powerful for the world, and it's very cool in a painting. So that's what I'm interested in.
Absolutely, yeah. And looking through your work, like several of the exhibits also covered environmentalism too in some way, right?
For sure.
Yeah, tell me a bit about that.
So moving to Alberta, I moved here, permanently I moved here 10 years ago, and learning about the pipelines and oil and gas as an industry, learning more about the real life effects on people and the economy. I have always been an environmentalist, but it never really was an well, I don't know how to say it. It never was real. When I came here to Alberta, it felt much more complex. Like, people make a living in oil and gas, and they're not bad people, and they don't hate the land. And it's a much more complex issue than I thought it was as a young person. So that's part of my interest, yeah.
Yeah, and it's holding those two different kind of viewpoints, right?
Right.
Yeah. Interesting, yeah. Has there been any reaction to your art when you're talking about these sorts of topics with your art?
No, I think the work that was more directly about environmentalism also included lots of animals. People love animals, and I think that my work was accessible in that way. I didn't get bad feedback. I've gotten more bad feedback from the figurative work, like the more recent work, just because people feel very conflicted about the human body, especially the female nude is an uncomfortable topic for people, especially in more conservative areas. So I actually have gotten more blowback on that than I have on the environmental content.
Interesting, yeah.
When I look back, in some ways, every painting I've ever done is a self-portrait, whether I'm physically in it or not. So in some ways, it all feels very connected.
Let's talk a bit about your teaching.
Right on.
How long have you been teaching here at the college?
I've been teaching here at the college for 10 years. I just got a Medalta crockpot as a gift for my 10-year anniversary.
Nice.
But I've been teaching for over 20 years because I taught in Oregon for 13 years before I moved here.
Yeah, and what sort of classes do you teach here?
Here I teach usually some first-year courses. So I teach first-year drawing, Drawing 1 and Drawing 2. I teach a class called 2D Fundamentals, which is an introduction to the building blocks of visual art. I teach the grad classes, which are when students graduate from this program, they get a show in this beautiful gallery. And we have a class dedicated to creating the work for that show. What else do I teach? I've taught painting, I've taught theory, not here, but in Oregon. Here, those are mainly the classes that I do. I've taught typography before here, which was a big learning curve for me and a lot of fun to teach. I've taught a portfolio class, so getting students familiar with building a portfolio and getting themselves ready to apply for work. Part of this program is this is an applied degree, so we have a work term associated with the program, 2 work terms. So students go in the summer and they get paid positions with designers or photographers, and they get to see what it's like to work in the field for a couple months and then go back to school, which I think is a really unique, cool aspect of this program.
And so they'd be doing like whatever they had learned, like pottery or painting or whatever it is, in that field experiment? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is design based, so they'll go work for a design studio. Some of them go to the Chamber of Commerce here in Medicine Hat, or they go work at the Esplanade in Medicine Hat or Medalta. But they'll go all over the place to work in galleries, sometimes work in an artist studio, and just get that hands-on work experience.
And I assume the students appreciate that experience?
They better.
They better, yeah. Yeah.
I think they do, yeah.
Yeah? Oh yeah, I'm sure they do. Do you have like a favorite class that you teach, if you could choose one?
I love teaching drawing because I think learning how to draw is like magical because it's learning how to see the world differently. So that's always a favorite class of mine. And I love the grad class too because sometimes I haven't seen those students in between. Like I see them in their very first semester as little babies, and then I see them in their very last semester when they're graduating and they have ideas and they've mastered some skills, and it's really exciting to see those both sides of the process.
One question comes to mind, like we ask people how the art has changed them as a person, but I'm also curious, like maybe how teaching has changed you as an artist. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so teaching, I think, has made me a more rigorous artist because I hear my own voice in my head, and I want to be able to say to my students that I'm doing what I'm telling them they're supposed to be doing. So I try to follow through with my work. I think I take it further than maybe I would if I weren't teaching. So it's almost like having a different sense of accountability because of having those other eyeballs watching me work. I don't know what I would be like if I wasn't an artist, right? So that's hard to say. I think being an artist has made me really tolerant of alone time, or being a loner has made me a better artist, maybe. I don't even know how to separate out making art from who I am. They're so integrated.
Yeah.
It would be like imagining a whole different person. Yeah.
Fair enough, fair enough. Yeah, I guess I could ask what is kind of next for you in your artistic journey? You talked about like going to more self-portraits, even though a lot of your work has been self-portraits.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's next?
More. I'm not done with these yet. I want to do more of these larger scale. They're 4 by 5 feet, which is a nice size for me because I'm about 5 feet tall, so I can pick it up by myself and kind of manipulate it on my own. Bigger than that starts to get a little unwieldy. So I really like that size, and I think I'm not done exploring myself. It's all about me.
Right.
Yeah. I have a show, I'll have some work in a show at the Esplanade that opens in January. That's a group show of artists across Canada who make work from a feminine perspective. I'll have 3 paintings in there. And then I'll have a show a year from now in Lethbridge at Casa, a solo show. So I hope to have more of these bigger self-portraits to show there.
Nice, nice. Lastly, I think, that was interesting, your comment about rejection and how that's, a big part of art.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned, your students, you tell them that's also a natural thing. Like,
Yeah.
do you have any kind of like memories of like a certain rejection of like, oh, that was so, really hit you harder than other ones, or?
Well, when I applied to graduate school, I was on the wait list at Yale, which is one of the top painting MFA programs in the States.
Okay.
And I was living in Mexico at the time, and I got an interview, so they had like a multi-tiered process. And I went from Mexico to Connecticut for the interview, and it was a big expense for me. It was very exciting. I felt like the interview went really well. I could just picture myself on campus there, and then I didn't get in, and I cried. It was devastating. It wasn't devastating. I went to an amazing graduate school. But that's what comes to mind in terms of rejection.
Yeah, at the time, I'm sure that felt like a really big deal and the end of the world probably. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But in the end, I guess maybe you went to the right school. Or
Yeah.
the other
I
one
got
for you.
to live in Italy, study for a year in Rome as part of my graduate degree. I had a studio overlooking the Tiber River in Rome. Like, people were going by on their motor scooters and smoking and on their little cell phones,
Nice.
eating pizza all at the same time. It's pretty good.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really been really nice talking with you, Jessica. We are gonna, next section, we're gonna actually look at some of the art and talk more about the art, and
Oh,
that'll
good.
be with Perry. It'll be good. So,
Great.
Yeah. So this has been the Windy City's Finest On Location with Mac and Perry. I'm Mac. He's Perry, and this is.
Jessica.
All right. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will be back soon.
Awesome. Welcome once again to the Windy City's Finest On Location with Mac and Perry. I'm Perry, he's Mac, and this is?
Jessica.
Yes, and I'm super excited to dive into our showcase segment with you, and I feel like it's very fitting that we are here in the gallery at the Medicine Hat College.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know that this piece behind us is yours. We touched base on it briefly earlier in another segment.
Right.
Yeah, magical realism is one of the, the kind of genre that I was kind of picking up.
Yeah.
And yeah, what can you tell me about this piece? What is the title of it, and what was your inspiration for it?
So it's a self-portrait. The title is Compose. And it's sort of about all of these self-portraits are about our identity not being a singular thing, but how we have multiple aspects of our personalities that come together in different ways. And sometimes we discard parts of ourselves. Sometimes different aspects of ourselves don't quite align the way we want them to.
Yeah.
So that's some of the thought process behind the painting.
And on a more technical note, I know you kind of said that this size is something that you're wanting to do more of.
Yeah.
Yeah, what can you tell me about that journey?
Well, this is a nice, like, sort of larger medium size. It's not super big, but it's big enough that when you stand in front of it, you're a little bit enveloped by the picture plane. And when you stand back across the room, you can still read quite a bit of the painting. And I like that size because I can, like, lift it up. I can build the frames all by myself.
Oh, awesome.
Whereas, like, when it gets a little bit bigger, like even 5 by 6 feet, it starts to get, I need somebody else to help me manipulate it. So I like being able to do it all by myself.
Yeah, that kind of sense of autonomy over the process. You can kind of do it yourself.
Yeah.
And I know that you kind of expressed earlier in another segment that idea of being able to have time by yourself in the studio. So I imagine that kind of autonomy is very important. And yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. And how long, if you know, how long does it take for you to cover a piece this size?
It varies so much because it depends on, some pieces happen faster and some pieces happen slower. And sometimes, like I said, this has been sitting in my studio for a few months and then I worked back into it and changed it. So it's hard to know when something is finished.
Right.
And I'm usually working on multiple pieces at the same time, so it's not like I start it and can log my hours and then know how many hours it is. But it's probably like several weeks of full-time work for each canvas. And some areas, so this painting has some areas of blank canvas that are unpainted.
Right.
That's kind of a new thing that I'm just exploring.
Yeah.
And then some areas are more worked, so yeah.
Multiple pieces on the go at once. Yeah, can you tell me more about that?
Well, so there's something nice about when you get stuck or there's always a danger of overworking a painting. Like, it's hard to know when it's really at a good stopping point. So if I have a few paintings on the go, like I'll have one on this wall of my studio and one on this wall of my studio, I can just like pivot and work on this other one. And then it helps me see each one with fresh eyes if I spend some time looking at something else.
Yeah. I'm going to invite us to get up here and we'll kind of go take a closer look. One thing I really appreciated earlier was you actually kind of referenced a blank wall, but you were talking about the shadows around it.
Yes.
And just this concept of like changing how you see from like, our fight or flight, just processing really quickly and actually slowing down and looking at the density of the shadows and just like how to see was that idea. And so I would be curious, maybe it's a bit meta with your own work, but like if I were looking at this piece, how would you direct me to like see it differently instead of just like brush past it? You know what I mean? What would be your first kind of touch point of?
Well, one thing is, like, you might assume that this is a figure, like a full entire figure.
Right.
And when you look at it, when you start puzzling through it, like maybe the legs are planted on this landscape, like standing in the illusion of this landscape. But then this top part is looks like it's taped onto the surface of the painting.
Yeah.
But this is, that's just paint. Nothing is actually taped on. But so there's like an illogical space thing happening.
Right.
That you might not notice at first glance, because it looks like, okay, there's a figure standing there.
Yeah.
And if you slow down and look at it, it starts to...
Absolutely. Disconfigure.
Disconfigure, decompose.
Decompose.
Because the title is Compose.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And absolutely, I'm understanding what you're saying now of that quick brush past our brains.
Yeah, your
put it
brain wants
together.
to understand it quickly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But if you take the time, you can
Yes.
start seeing the depth.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And I also, you mentioned like playing with open space.
Yes.
What can you tell me about that?
My tendency is usually to overwork things and get like, so this is like, to keep this nice and loose like this is a goal for me.
Right.
And then I want to have some areas that are really tightly rendered.
Yeah.
And then I just want to experiment with leaving some areas unpainted. It's a technical challenge because you have to, if I mess up, I can't get it back again, you
Right.
know? Whereas like down here, if I mess something up, I can just paint right over it. But if I'm trying to maintain blank canvas, I can't get it back to the blank canvas again.
Right.
But I like that challenge.
Yeah.
And then I also like this idea of the landscape moving back closer to the color of the canvas. So there's something called atmospheric perspective, which is where...
We're in class now, yeah.
So atmospheric perspective is where things get blurrier and hazier as they move into the distance. So you see it in Alberta on the prairie all over the place.
Right.
When or in Medicine Hat, the coulees, the hills on the other side of the coulee look hazy. So getting here, the color is brighter and more intense, and edges are sharper. And then as it moves back into the distance, it's getting closer to the color of the raw canvas.
Yeah.
And that's what helps make it feel like it's, hopefully make it feel like it's moving back into the distance.
Interesting.
So that's one of my favorite things about painting is that you can make it look like the illusion of space.
Yeah.
Like the canvas is a window that you're looking into. And then you can also emphasize the flatness of it, like something is stuck onto the surface of the window.
Yeah. In the interest of time,
Yes.
I really want to see some other pieces.
You bet.
So we will just move along to, we'll just kind of place ourselves in the middle here. And so these are drawings. Is that
These are
correct?
drawings. They're pencil and pencil crayon, which in the United States of America we call colored crayons.
Colored crayons, okie dokie.
But here they're pencil crayons.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these are, so taking some similar motifs from the paintings and playing with them on a smaller scale. So this idea of like cutting out part of the figure,
Yeah.
all of these are playing with that idea.
Yeah.
And the same idea of, it's called trompe-l'oeil. I don't have a good French accent, but it means fool the eye. So that's the technique where something appears to be stuck onto
I was
the...
just about to say, that seems
Yeah.
to be a theme, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's partially the idea, it feels temporary, like you could rearrange it at any moment. Just like sometimes our sense of self feels like it could be reshuffled at any moment,
Yeah.
or something happens and we change. But it isn't, because it's permanent.
Yeah,
It's drawn on
absolutely.
there.
Yeah. And you know, you mentioned that in your studio you'll have, you know, various pieces on the walls, and then you will kind of also pivot to this medium.
Yes.
What can you tell me about that process of pivoting? Because in my mind, it's like, and I do this a lot, it's that idea of like shifting gears potentially.
Yes.
And it can be very tiring, but sometimes energizing.
Yeah.
So where does that land for you?
For me, the drawing is just quicker. So like when I'm teaching a lot, I'm in this new role as coordinator of the program, which is taking loads of time.
Totally.
Like writing emails
Capacity,
and
yeah.
whatever, budgets and things that I haven't had to spend my time doing as much. But I do have time. If I have 2 hours in the evening, I can sit down and draw, whereas I might not have the bandwidth to like set up and paint.
Right.
So part of it is just a matter of scale.
Yeah. We'll move on to this piece on the
Yeah.
other side. I'm seeing similar. I love the tape.
Yeah,
And it looks like
trompe-l'oeil.
I could peel it off. Like I don't know how
Right.
it's translating on the video here, but it looks like I could literally take this corner and peel it off.
Right,
But
but
I
it's
cannot.
all just solid,
But
just
it's
one
all
surface.
solid. Yeah. And atmospheric perspective.
Very good.
Yes.
And linear perspective,
And
too.
linear
Yeah.
perspective, because it looks like those lines are converging.
Right.
Okie dokie. And yeah, what could you tell me about this? What what would you like people to take away from it, if anything?
So
I
it's
guess?
also a self-portrait. It's called the Walker. And you know, I love walking.
Yes, we do. We learned that earlier.
Coming full circle.
Yes.
But the idea of this solid, similar to that painting where there's like a part of it is solid that's like planted on the actual landscape, even though the scale doesn't make any sense. It's
Sure.
a gigantic foot. But then there is no body and there are no arms. It's just a head and a foot. And sometimes when I'm walking, I feel like that's what I am, is just these eyes, like looking at things. And I feel the most free when I'm in that state where I'm just eyes looking around and perceiving things, and not concerned about the body and like doing things with my hands. I don't have to produce anything, I'm just perceiving. But then there's also the idea of being pieced together and combining some different emotions. So there's some like anger and fear and some yelling happening with those mouths.
Yeah.
And then in some of the parts of the face, the mouth is being cut off. So ideas of being blocked from communicating and things like that. And then I just love the idea of playing with something that looks like it's on the surface, but it also looks like there's a deep space.
I love that these are like self-portraits, but not necessarily what people would think of when they think of a self-portrait.
Right.
It's kind of more, I don't know. I'm not quite sure what the words are, but I love that it's different. I love that.
Yeah. I have an assignment that I do with my drawing classes that's a narrative self-portrait.
Okay.
And I think these are kind of narrative in that they're like telling a story a little bit. But there may be more emotional self-portraits rather than the surface.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Yeah. And the first thematic tie that happened unintentionally?
This was an accident.
Yeah.
We were not aware. So this is Dean Smale's work. Dean Smale is also an instructor here at Medicine Hat College, and he's my spouse.
Hey.
And so this is his work in the show. He has an interesting process where he paints in acrylic on board and then pours molten beeswax over the board. Dean and I realized after the fact that we had each made paintings of single disembodied feet with weird structures on top of them. And they're actually, a friend pointed out the other day that they're the opposite feet, like they could go together.
Oh my gosh.
And
Yeah.
form one little bizarre figure. And that was totally accidental.
Yeah.
Like, I did that painting last year, and Dean was not thinking about that painting when he made this painting, and just seeing them side by side or whatever in the same space, we realized that connection.
Yeah.
Kind of funny.
Fantastic. That is all the time we have for this segment. Thank you
Great.
so much for all your insight.
Very fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. And yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, be it on the live stream or otherwise. This has been the Windy City's finest, On Location with Mac and Perry. I'm Perry, he's Mac, and this is
Jessica.
It's Mac and Perry in the place. Da-na-na-na. Mac and Perry.
Go live to create.
Da-na-na-na. Mac and Perry invite you to stay.